When I finally realized who they were going to have me marry, I was devastated. I immediately stood up and walked out of the room.
A packed Utah courtroom held spellbound late last year as a tearful and soft-spoken young woman told Judge James Shoemate during the preliminary hearing for Warren Jeffs how at the age of 14 she pleaded with the polygamous prophet not to force her to marry a 19-year-old first cousin.
And I just said, I don't think that this is right for me, because I just feel like that I need to have some time to grow up. And I said, and I am not willing to marry my cousin. He asked me if I was praying about it, and I said, yes, I am, and everything is telling me not to do this. I told Warren, I said, well, my heart is telling me that this is not what is right for me right now. It's telling me that it's wrong. And he came right out and he said, well, your heart is in the wrong place.
This was a horrific experience. She should have been home playing dolls with her, at her mother's house, not sewing a wedding dress and getting ready to enter into this kind of serious relationship, and was subsequently raped.
Salt Lake attorney Greg Houle represents the young woman in a civil lawsuit against Warren Jeffs, and Houle tells me his client now anxious to tell her story before a jury.
She is staying very strong, and she's absolutely committed to doing the right thing, and she knows that the right thing is just going to trial and testifying the truth of what happened to her.
How despite her repeated protests and with only a couple of days' warning, she was then loaded into a car in Hilldale, Utah, and taken with a group of other young brides to a remote little town called Caliente, Nevada, an isolated dot on the desert map, a small hotel called the Caliente Hot Springs, where Warren Jeffs and his followers are believed to have performed dozens of underage illegal marriages over the years, out of sight of snooping reporters and Arizona and Utah law officers.
This entire time that I was there, I was crying, and I honestly just wanted to die because I was so scared. Excuse me. Sorry, this is very hard for me to relate. It's not easy. It's very painful. This was the darkest time in my entire life.
And she's lived that nightmare, and she recognizes that she needs to play a very special role in bringing that to a stop.
But the lawyer, well aware his client will be vigorously attacked on the witness stand by Warren Jeffs' team of attorneys, who will point to the fact that the young woman first filed a civil lawsuit seeking monetary damages from Warren Jeffs before telling her story to Utah prosecutors.
We invite them to explore that in trial, because I think in the end the jury's going to see exactly what MJ's about.
And that's because Houle says instead of asking for millions of dollars, his client instead is asking for only about 6 acres of undeveloped land in Colorado City for her family, and that a $1 million trust fund be set up, not for her, but instead for the many other young women she left behind, young women who, like her, may someday want to escape.
It's an opportunity to make a real difference in people's lives. There's some real travesties that have occurred down in Colorado City, and we're fortunate enough to be involved in a very large effort to do something about that.
First today for Warren Jeffs on the first day of his trial. Not the usual law enforcement motorcade, but instead a helicopter transport early this morning from the Purgatory Jail to the Washington County Courthouse, where under very tight security, the 51-year-old polygamous leader then ushered inside wearing a green and white jailhouse jumpsuit, topped off with a bulletproof vest and shackles on both his hands and his feet.
We're back on the record on the 13th of September 2007, the state v. Jeffs.
And once inside, Mr. Jeffs then donning a suit and Judge James Shoemate promptly getting down to business, whittling down the jury pool one last time to the final 12 people who will hear the case against Warren Jeffs, 7 women and 5 men who will decide if Warren Jeffs was an accomplice to the rape of a 14-year-old girl, a girl who Jeffs ordered into an arranged marriage with her 19-year-old first cousin.
Even though he knew the testimony would be that she did not want to be in the same room with him, she did not want to hold his hand, he joined their hands together, pronounced them husband and wife, and commanded them to multiply and replenish the earth.
In his opening statements, prosecutor Brock Belknap telling jurors the teenager objected strenuously to Warren Jeffs, but to no avail, while defense attorney Tara Isaacson countering that the state will not be able to prove that a rape occurred, and certainly not that Warren Jeffs had a hand in any criminal activity.
We start today, start this trial with the presumption that this man is innocent. Not that we don't know, not that, could be. He's innocent.
I think you understand that while this is pending, it's inappropriate for us to comment. So we'll talk to you after it's all over. Thank you very much.
Happy to have it started, Brian.
That's all we're going to say. Thank you very much.
And on their way out of court, very few comments from both prosecutors and the defense team.
Glad the trial's begun.
And how did it go for you today?
It went fine. Thank you.
I sat in there and cried and cried and cried. I could not believe that I had just gotten married.
We cannot show her face, but today in a packed Utah courtroom, her emotional story laid out in vivid detail.
The prophet had a place of marriage for me, and that I was to prepare myself for that place.
It is the story of a now 21-year-old young woman who says at the age of 14 she was forced against her will into an arranged marriage to her 19-year-old first cousin, an illegal union with no license that she today told a Utah jury was ordered and performed by polygamous prophet Warren Steed Jeffs.
I was extremely emotional, and I felt betrayed.
By whom?
By the people I trusted most.
And who were those people?
Fred, Jessup, my father, and Warren.
Why did you feel betrayed by Warren Jeffs?
Because he completely overlooked the fact that this was something I did not want to do.
The young woman's story, of course, the centerpiece of Utah's criminal prosecution of Warren Jeffs, and under the gentle guidance of State Prosecutor Craig Barlow, the young woman telling how on an April morning in 2001, she was loaded into a van in Hilldale, Utah, along with her cousin, and driven to an isolated little hotel in the tiny town of Caliente, Nevada, and there made to marry her cousin with Warren Jeffs officiating.
He said, "Now go forth and multiply and replenish the earth with good priesthood children."
How did you feel about it at that time?
Horrified that I would have to do that with her.
Did you know how babies were created right there?
No, I didn't.
I went to my father and told him I desired a placement marriage through the prophet.
First up for the defense, a woman who says she was always in charge of her own destiny. Jenny Pipkin telling jurors that although her marriage was arranged, she brought up the idea, and she claims she even told Warren Jeffs and his father, Rulon, who she wanted her husband to be.
Rulon, he was quite humorous. He said, "Well, who does she want to marry?" And we all laughed, and he turned to Warren and said, "Did you write it down?"
In fact, she told jurors that women are always led by God's will, not their husbands.
Is a wife obligated to obey or agree with everything that her husband says in a marital relationship?
Absolutely not. Of course not. That would be hypocritical. What if he went psycho?
And in her own marriage, she said Warren Jeffs was a hero, saving her from a husband who she says began forcing himself on her.
One night I woke up and he had taken my clothes off and was touching me very intimately. And I got up and got my clothes and walked out of the room and went down and slept on the couch. The next morning, I reported the incident to Warren Jeffs, and 2.5 days later, I was released from my marriage.
But on cross-examination, prosecutors tried to turn those words to their own advantage. All along, Mr. Jeffs' lawyers have said their client's chief accuser, Jane Doe, never mentioned the words sex or rape when she spoke to Warren Jeffs, so he would have had no way of knowing if she was being sexually abused. But this witness's testimony seemed to contradict that.
You didn't say explicitly, my husband wants to have sex with me and I'm refusing and I don't like it. You didn't say that, did you?
Not in those words.
But you trusted that Mr. Jeffs would understand when you said, well, he's touching in my private parts, that there was unwanted sexual advances going on,
Yes.
right?
I believe that every story needs two sides in order for the truth to come out. I don't believe that Warren Jeffs has ever done anything wrong.
Powerful testimony in the unprecedented criminal prosecution of polygamist leader Warren Steed Jeffs today, as this morning the case against Jeffs transformed into a classic he said, she said courtroom drama.
Did you ever obtain a marriage license?
No, I did not.
You give a wedding ring?
Yes, sir.
Did you consider yourself to be married?
I did.
This is Mr. Jeffs' attorneys called to the witness stand 26-year-old Alan Steed, the man who 6 years ago was placed into an arranged marriage by Mr. Jeffs, a marriage between Alan Steed and his then 14-year-old first cousin. Alan Steed then allegedly raped the girl, an alleged rape for which Warren Jeffs now stands charged as an accomplice.
In private, she was very affectionate at times. In public, she hardly wanted anything to do with me.
Indeed, during emotional and at times bizarre testimony, Alan Steed, who early on asked to be allowed to stand in the witness box, told jurors that while his unlicensed marriage to his 14-year-old first cousin was at times rough and rocky, he never once forced himself upon the girl.
Did you ever force yourself on?
No, sir, never.
If he asked you to stop, did you stop?
Yes, I did.
Alan Steed's story directly contradicting that of the state's star witness, Jane Doe, who at one point this morning rushed out of the courtroom crying. Her story, after being forced into an arranged marriage by Warren Jeffs, her husband/cousin then raped her, a sexual encounter that Alan Steed today testified was actually initiated by the girl about 3 weeks after the wedding.
She woke me up and asked me if I cared about her. I loved her, and I told her I did.
Then what happened?
She rolled up close to me and she asked me to scratch her back. And one thing led to the next until we found myself being guided up onto her with her arm. And we had sexual intercourse.
During his testimony, Alan Steed did confirm one part of his now ex-wife's story, an incident shortly after the wedding when she says she was still strenuously rebuffing his sexual advances.
I ended up exposing myself to her.
But despite that marital misstep, Alan Steed sticking to his story that he never forced sex on his young wife, but instead did his best to woo her with love letters, showering her with patience, trying to be a good husband.
I always tried to have faith that this would work.
And as far as Warren Jeffs' role, Alan Steed saying that Jeffs did nothing but counsel the young couple to love each other and to make their union last for time and all eternity.
To pray together, work together, play together, love each other.
The state has gone crazy for political reasons that we'll talk about to charge Warren Jeffs with this crime of rape. So you have to begin and truly breathe life into the idea that this man is innocent.
A powerful and passionate defense today for polygamous leader Warren Steed Jeffs, as Jeffs' attorney Walter Bugden charged that the state of Utah is guilty of a well-orchestrated religious persecution of an unpopular prophet and his faith's unpopular beliefs.
His church, his religious beliefs His religion is what's on trial here, being dressed up as a crime called rape.
And on that note, Bugden telling jurors there was no rape, and that while Warren Jeffs did indeed perform an illegal marriage of a 14-year-old girl named Alyssa Wall and her 19-year-old first cousin Alan Steed never raped his teenage bride, meaning Warren Jeffs could not have been an accomplice.
It happened because Elisa wanted it to happen. It happened because Elisa consented to sexual relations. No different, there's no reason to believe that the sexual relationship, that the sexual component, that what happened in the bedroom was any different than any other aspect of their relationship where Elisa did exactly what Elisa wanted to do.
Indeed, Bugden going to great lengths to muddy the character of the alleged rape victim, Alyssa Wall, saying she was no shrinking violet but a headstrong young girl who, before telling cops of the alleged abuse, told her story to a private attorney in preparation of filing a civil lawsuit seeking monetary damages.
Money changes everything. Money changes everything. Golly gee, there could be a real rainbow, and at the end of that rainbow, there could be a pot of gold.
And the bottom line, according to Bugden, overzealous prosecutors have wrongly accused his client, and his client, Warren Jeffs, is not guilty of being an accomplice to rape.
They prosecuted Warren Jeffs for rape because he is the leader of a church and a religion that the state doesn't approve of.
Count one, that the defendant is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt.
With the announcement of one simple word, guilty, in a Utah courtroom today, the course of history altered perhaps forever in the American Southwest, as polygamous prophet Warren Steed Jeffs was convicted of being an accomplice to the rape of a 14-year-old girl, and a ringing statement delivered by a Utah jury that the systematic abuse and exploitation of women and children inside polygamous communities will no longer be tolerated.
The jury has reached their verdict. I feel it is a just verdict. I am grateful, after listening to them speak, to hear how conscientiously they applied the law to the facts and how seriously they attempted, with good faith, to carry out their duties.
A soft-spoken but gutsy young prosecutor in Washington County, Utah, named Brock Belknap, heading up the state's unprecedented case against Warren Jeffs, a case centered around the claims of a young woman named Alyssa Wall, who bravely took the witness stand and told jurors how at the age of 14 she was forced into an arranged marriage by Warren Jeffs, a marriage to her 19-year-old first cousin, Alan Steed, a man who then raped her.
He came over and pulled me over to the bed, and I just said, Alan, I can't do this. Please, just don't. And I was sobbing, and my whole entire body was just shaking because I was so scared.
The quiet calm inside the courthouse was nothing compared to what went on outside. Photographers, reporters, and producers waiting on pins and needles.
Something's happening.
And as two guilty verdicts came down, the media came running out, cell phones glued to their ears, racing for position to break the news to the world.
The bottom line is it started with these women. Now it's a media circus, attention all over the world, satellite trucks everywhere. This is being broadcast to every corner of the globe.
And even as reporters like our own Mike Watkins were live on the air, key players in this courtroom drama swiftly made their way past a horde of cameras. In contrast, prosecutors and their star witness lined up at the podium to speak.
The blonde young woman is Alyssa Wall, Jane Doe number 4, now speaking to the media. We're going to go to that camera now.
This is the biggest story in the world right now, and it all played out in our own backyard.
Our Mike Watkins is in St. George now with details. Mike, we're waiting for the girl known as Alyssa Wall. She has changed her name now, but she was 14 when all this happened, right?
Yeah, right. And we first came to know her as Jane Doe number 4. That's how she was referred to in legal documents. She's the young woman who's now 21 years of age, has married, has 2 children. But back when she was inside the FLDS community in Hilldale, Utah, Colorado City, Arizona, at the age of 14, she was told by her mother and her stepfather that she was going to be placed into a marriage. She said she objected strenuously to anybody who would listen. Warren Jeffs ordered her into that marriage. She went up and said, "My heart is telling me that this is not the right thing to do." Mr. Jeffs allegedly told her, "Your heart is in the wrong place." Forced her into this marriage. It was Mr. Jeffs who actually conducted the ceremony in a little town called Caliente, Nevada. Married Alyssa Wall, the 14-year-old girl, to her then 19-year-old first cousin, a young man named Alan Steed, a young man that Alyssa Wall said throughout her childhood she didn't like it. He was a bully to her, made fun of her about her weight, was malicious to her throughout her childhood. Suddenly she's told at 14, "You're going to marry this man a couple of days from now." She tried to object and tried to say she didn't want to do this to anybody who would listen. She was forced into the marriage. Mr. Jeffs performed that marriage, and then her designated husband, Alan Steed, raped her 2 weeks after the marriage, and so then again another forced sexual encounter sometime after that. Those are the circumstances of the 2 charges that Mr. Jeffs was today found guilty of being an accomplice to. Miss Wall has said that she would make a comment. Her lawyer told me last night that after the verdict was rendered today, she would come out here, step up to the podium that we have now set up in front of the courthouse, the 5th District Courthouse here in St. George, and make a comment to the media. We're told that that's just a couple of moments away. Very courageous young woman. So many of these young girls have come out of the community telling the same stories. We have reported on dozens of them, but she's the first one that they have actually been able to put together a case and stick it to Warren Jeffs, the man who basically controls all of the lives in Colorado City and Hilldale, Utah. We now see that the door is opening up, being ushered out by bailiffs. We see the county attorney, Brock Belknap, his assistant, Ryan Shan, and Brian Filter. Those are the men who were really responsible for the state's case. Just beyond them, the blonde young woman is Alyssa Wall, Jane Doe number 4, now speaking to the media. We're going to go to that camera now.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. The jury has reached their verdict. I feel it is a just verdict. I am grateful, after listening to them speak, to hear how conscientiously they applied the law to the facts and how seriously they attempted, with good faith, to carry out their duties. It reaffirms my faith in the jury system. It makes me proud of their service and their hard work. One of the highlights of the past year and a half, and one of the highlights of my entire life, will always be the courage of Alyssa Wall. It has been an honor to stand alongside a woman who spoke out to stop a practice of abuse against enormous odds and against enormous power. In my mind, Alyssa is a pioneer. There always has to be someone willing to go first. She stood and took the stand and withstood attacks on her credibility and reputation with honor and with dignity. I hope that her example will shine a light of hope for others who might be in other situations where they are in circumstances that they feel like are out of their control. I will always remember and be grateful for Alyssa Wall. I also want to thank so many people who helped with the prosecution of this case. My lead prosecutor, Ryan Sham, Jerry Jager, Brian Filter, Roger Smith from my office, my entire office staff, the Attorney General's office and Craig Barlow. I express appreciation to the security staff, the Washington County Sheriff's Office, and the St. George Police Department. This has been a remarkable experience for me personally. I also want to just say that it is very unusual for someone in small town St. George to deal with the media. And I want to just say that I appreciate your courtesy and your patience and understanding as we've tried to do our jobs in this case. We have other work to do. We have more cases pending. We have other things ahead of us. I hope you'll understand that we have to be careful what we say because the case is not over. We're still awaiting sentencing. There will probably be appeals. There are other potential cases related to this matter. So we're just going to go back and go to work. Thank you.
You'll have to bear with me, I'm starting to lose my voice. When I was young, my mother taught me that evil flourishes when good men do nothing. This has not been easy for us. The easy thing would have been to do nothing. But I have followed my heart and I've spoken the truth. Lamont and I would like to convey our love to our families. Mother, I love you and my sisters unconditionally. I will go to the ends of the earth for you. I understand and respect your convictions, but I will not give up on you. I have very tender feelings for the FLDS people. There is so much good in them. I pray they will find the strength to step back and re-examine what they have been told to believe and follow their hearts. This trial has not been about religion or a vendetta. It is simply about child abuse and preventing further abuse. I hope that all FLDS girls and women will understand that no matter what anyone may say, you are created equal. You do not have to surrender your rights or your spiritual sovereignty. I know how hard it is, but please stand up and fight. Fight for your voice and power of choice. I will continue to fight for you. To those who have been there to support and keep Lamont and myself encouraged, words cannot begin to express our gratitude. I hope the FLDS people will feel the same kindness as they make their difficult journey. I would like to thank Brock Belknap and the prosecuting legal team for all their kindness and hard work. There is a saying by Emily Dickinson that says, "Opinion is a flitting thing, but truth outlasts the sun." Thank you.
A very brave young woman, the young woman known as Alyssa Wall. She has legally changed her name, formerly known as Jane Doe number 4, before she became known. And Mike Watkins is there. She made it very clear she still has what she called very tender feelings toward the FLDS people, and she says there's much good in them, but that her message is that the girls need to stand up and assert their power of choice, and that her goal is to prevent child abuse. And I think that was very clear. And boy, what a courageous young woman that is. Mike?
Patty, no question about it. I think we have just seen one of the great heroes of our time standing up there and talking with such eloquence, talking about this was not a vendetta. This was about empowering young people who perhaps feel themselves in a situation where they have no control. This young woman is indeed, as Brock Belknap said, a pioneer. We have been telling these same stories for how many years now, and it finally took an Alyssa Wall. And I think the beauty of this story has always been, certainly from my storyteller's perspective, the people who have made the difference are women who have gotten out of that community and stood up and said, hell no, we're not going to allow happen to our young sisters, our brothers, our nephews, and our nieces. What happened to us, we will not allow it to happen to them. Alyssa Wall is a pioneer. This was a big step forward in the states of Utah and Arizona in stopping this child abuse, this rampant child abuse, this predation on young girls that has really spiraled under the leadership of Warren Jeffs among the FLDS community. And she's right. As a whole, they are some of the finest, most decent, most hardworking, smartest people you're going to find, born into a situation where they're told there is only one right way, and that's under the leadership of the prophet. In Mr. Jeff's case, that leadership has taken on all kinds of sinister and abusive dimensions. But Alyssa Wall stood up today. She's really a great hero in a long line of heroes, starting with people like Flora Jessup, women up in Salt Lake City that formed a group called the Tapestry Against Polygamy. That's where this revolution started. It's fitting that a woman is really leading the charge here because they are the heroes of this story.
And as Brock Belknap indicated, there are more cases to come, and you know the word's going to get out to other girls in those communities, and more,
it's out.
More will come forward.
It's out. You know that the word has already spread up on the Arizona Strip, in Hilldale, Utah, Colorado City, El Dorado, Texas. They know what's happened to their prophet, and they know that the states of Utah and the states of Arizona are no longer going to tolerate these forced underage marriages, the statutory rape of these children, the tossing aside of the young boys. The states have made a very powerful statement today.
And the Utah Attorney General, Mike, had this to say, Mark Shurtleff: this verdict is a victory for the many victims who have been hurt by Warren Jeffs and have been too afraid to speak out. Everyone should now know that no one is above the law. Religion is not an excuse for abuse, and every victim has a right to be heard. We also have a statement from Attorney General Terry Goddard from here in Arizona that history was made today and that this case was not about religious beliefs, but about protecting young women from being abused. Much more about this story. Thank you so much, Mike, for your hard work in this case. You've done an awesome job all these years, and we're going to have much more coming up on Good Evening Arizona.